Hey folks, welcome and welcome back to the channel. Guess what today is? Today is the first day that I'm filming an episode after being on YouTube for almost exactly a year to the day. How do I know that? Because YouTube sends you out these congratulatory emails if you make it to a year. And in fact, the first YouTuber that I ever spoke to, a guy named Joe Kuhn, and I suggest go back and take a look at his videos. It's at Joe Kuhn Loves Retirement. But one of the things he told me early on was just get after it, tell your story, and people know that you're the real deal after a year. Well, here we are, a year later. I've got 750 plus subscribers. I've got an ungodly number of watch hours, and we continue moving on. So, this is my way of just saying, thank you to the community. I'm glad that I'm able to deliver something of value to you. And I would ask that you continue to leave comments in the comment section. There's some things we haven't gotten to yet, and so if the pressure comes up for me to just make the plunge and do it, then I'll do it. So things like a live or just different things we could do on the channel to make it a little bit more interesting, because part of me wants to do a live, but I'm afraid that if I do a live and nobody shows up, then it hurts my ego. Not really, but I just don't want to waste your time. What I want to make sure of is that anything that I do for you, I'm doing for you and not just for me. Because none of what I'm doing here is really about me. It's about sharing the information that I have, because unfortunately, a lot of people just haven't had access to the information that's going to help them retire, nor have they had access to somebody who actually retired early. And so just a little bit about me. I'm 53. I retired about 2 years ago at 51, and I've been sharing my story for the last year. And this story isn't just the things that got me to retirement, but what early retirement is like. There's a lot of people that are going to feel like they want to retire early just because they don't want to work. But the reality is that there's some harsh realities that sit underneath being retired early that also are things that you need to take into account. So I'll talk about a couple of those things today, because I think you'll get an interesting perspective. So on that note, let's get into it. So this week was an interesting week for me. I did 3 things that I don't normally do. I think I've told you on other episodes that I try to step outside of my comfort zone and do things that I'm not necessarily comfortable with or that I've never done before, like going to the game, the River Cats game for the first time, or taking a Master Gardener program, or just some of those other miscellaneous things that I do that I'm not incredibly comfortable doing, but I've done those things and they've all had a good result. And so this week, it was a bunch of those. So I'll talk about each of them, because each of them are a little bit unique, but they gave me a different perspective that I'm going to share with you, because again, it's all about sharing perspective. So a couple days ago, I got a phone call from a buddy of mine, and he said that a friend of his started a business or is responsible for a nonprofit that gives job skills and training to people that are in reentry. And so if you don't know what reentry is, it's for people that go to prison. And so a lot of us get caught into the conversation about ex-prisoners and pulling up your bootstraps and all of that stuff, but they don't take into account the reality that when you get out of prison, it's hard to get a job. And it's hard to get skills that are going to be the requisite skills necessary to get a job. So this organization is designed to do that. Well, like anything else, all organizations have money. They get donations. They get donations from people. The city that I live in, they were going through their budget cycle. So I went and sat through a finance committee meeting where everybody was asking about the money. And so there were a few areas that they talked about. One, they had the audits, the city work plans and audits, because they're saying we're doing all this work, so they're going to audit that work is actually having the intended outcome, which I think is great, because I think accountability, particularly in government, is incredibly important. Now, I don't like what's happening now at the federal level, so I want to be clear on that, but I do think there has to be accountability in government. Something else they talked a lot about was the cannabis funding, because what's happening is there's all of this money that's going into funding the schools for cannabis, and apparently the taxes for cannabis, because it's highly taxed, some of that money is supposed to go to schools, just like the lottery. Some of that money was supposed to go to schools. And so there was a question about the Who's going to, what's the accounting of that money? How much money's going there? Because people are smoking a lot of weed out here in California. But are the schools doing any better? Maybe all the students are high. I know that was a bad joke. I probably shouldn't have said that. Maybe if I remember, I'll rewind that one. But, the reality is, though, is people are asking about where's that money going, and are the schools really benefiting from it? And then the other one that they talked a little bit about was just some of the other programs in the city. So like the fire department wanting funding and some of that. And there's some interesting revelations to be had when you look at some of the national platforms and some of the local platforms. So one of the things that we were talking about yesterday was that they want to pay higher paramedic fees or paramedic fees for the fire department for their ambulance driving. And so my question is, why is the city driving ambulances in the first place? Isn't it more cost effective to pay a private company because they have the economy of scale? But and so in each of these things, and again, there was a whole list of them. I'm not going to go through a whole list of them, but I wanted to give you an idea of the kind of stuff they talked about. But one of the things that I noticed is that for everybody that was not a city employee, they only had 2 minutes to give their comment. And the other thing I noticed on top of that was that there were only 2 or 3 people from the entire audience that went up and they gave speeches. And the funny part about it, and it's funny but not funny, and I want to talk a little bit about this, is it was the same 2 or 3 people that continued to get up. So for everything that was brought up as an agenda item, there were 2 or 3 people that got up out of the crowd, the same 2 or 3 people. One person appeared to be a younger, socially activistic type. Another individual was an 83-year-old cheesecake baker, had his own business. And I forgot what the other guy did, but he got up and he had something to say about everything. And I tell you this because when you retire, you have all this free time on your hands and you have a lot of time to get really good information. If you want political information, I got good political information. If you want news information, I got good news information. If you want finance information, I get good finance information. But when you go to these meetings where people are making those types of decisions, guess who's there? It's a bunch of other retired folks. It's folks that just have the time or that just want to make the statement. And by the way that they were responding to him, or those 3 individuals, it appeared that they go all the time and do the same thing. And so if you continue to do that, sure, a squeaky wheel gets the grease, but over time, people get tired of hearing the squeaky wheel. So one of the things that is incredibly important for you to get engaged in when you retire, particularly if you retire early, is in civic engagement, is in going to these meetings, because the other side of that is the only person that's speaking up for the citizenry, which would mean you or I, are going to be those 3 people that continue to go up inside of the rooms. And they schedule these meetings during the day, so who's going to go? So again, you start to see why some of the things that you don't want to happen, and why some of the things you want to see happen, not happen, because nobody's really representing you, and everybody else in there all has an interest. And we're going to dig into that one in a little bit with my third one. But with my second one, the other thing I had the opportunity to do is, so this past week, many of you know that I'm in the Master Gardener program. And as a Master Gardener, we learn about a whole bunch of gardening things, farming things. And so I went to a class this past week, and it talked about worm composting. So as a result of that worm composting class, they gave us a bin with a few worms and some shavings inside of the tub. That's with holes poked in the sides and the bottom, so that way the water and air could get in and out and so on. But they only gave us about 25 worms. In this big bin, 25 worms wasn't going to be enough. So I went down to a city called Lodi. It's about 40 minutes away from where I am. And I bought some worms. I went and talked to a worm farmer. But anybody that knows me knows that any conversation that we get into isn't just going to be a conversation about whatever it is. It's going to be me trying to understand who you are and how you think. Because to me, what's important isn't necessarily what a person knows. It's how a person gets to a place of sharing what it is that they know. And the guy I talked to, his name was Michael, and I asked him how long he'd been a farmer. He'd been a farmer for a while. He's probably in his 80s by now, and he had these long rows of compost that had worms in it. It was incredible. But we ended up getting into, a little bit about his life, being a classically trained chef and going to school at the Culinary Institute for cooking. And, he's just kind of this big time dude, but, he's 80 years old. So at 80 years old, you're not really big time anymore if you're most people. But we started talking about things that were relevant to farmers and things that were going on in the California politic. And we got into this conversation for an hour. We talked about things like the changes to climate and how that's impacting the normal cycles of gardening, not gardening, but of farming. We talked about the impact of moving away from gas and into electric vehicles and tools. We talked a little bit about technology and the different types of technological changes and the types of technology that's used. But what I started to realize is that he and I had the same position on a lot of things. Now, we had different ways of getting there. So where there's a group of people in America that would make you think that everybody's against electricity and wind, but I'm talking to farmers, and the farmers are telling me that they like wind energy and they like electric, but it has to be taken into account that a lot of their vehicles run with gas and that transition is really expensive for them. And without subsidies from the government, it becomes cost prohibitive. So there's this whole kind of dynamic. But at the end of the day, we both see the same thing. We both see what's happening to the earth. We just have different ways of going. I'm a city kid. He was a farm kid, but we both came from different perspectives, but we saw the same thing. And so I say all that to say that as a retiree, you have a unique opportunity to help bridge some of those gaps. At this stage of my life, I realize that I don't want to go into a life of activism. I don't want to, beyond what I'm doing currently with my YouTube channels and just trying to be the best that I could be and share good information. But I don't want to go down the path of being a politician. I'm not particularly interested in trying to lead these big groups, but what I am interested in doing is trying to bridge the gap. That's why I think this community is so important, because this is a community for us to be able to just have conversations about things in a nonpartisan, objective kind of way. I think that when you start looking at people's ability to get to where it is they want to be or to meet their dreams, there's nothing political about it. The fact of the matter is, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Independent, everybody wants to feed their family and they want to find the best way to do that. And so, again, through these conversations, I'm starting to see that. And the last thing, I had the interesting part to participate in is I talk about not wanting to become political and get in all of that. I'm in what's called a community coalition. And so my town has a community coalition. And what this coalition does is it really supports the residents and the decisions that the city's making. So a lot of what was talked about in that finance committee meeting that I was talking about before, this is where it gets actualized, because you have to spend the money and there's actual projects on the other end. And so part of what this group does is they're responsible for providing public comment from the community when they're putting up some type of new business or something that's going to have an impact to the well-being of the community. So they're building now, probably about 2 miles from my house, 3 miles from my house, near the airport. They're building, maybe a little longer than that, but you get the idea, close enough for me to be part of their community of interest. They're building 6 million square feet of warehouses. And so what you have is you have a school, and then on the other side, behind that school, they'd put 6 million square feet of warehouses, and then to the right of that, there's another community there. And so they talk about, we're going to put in 15 foot of buffer between the community and the warehouse. Folks, I worked in logistics for a lot of years. There is nothing you can do in a 15-foot buffer zone that's going to stop the clanging and the banging. So one of the questions that I had during the meeting was, are the homeowners aware of this? Because the homeowners all moved to this town for a better quality of life. And when you put million square foot warehouses in an area, that is going to have an impact on people's quality of life. And so the answer I got back was, yeah, we talked to them. We let the community know. We had a community meeting, which was held at a school that nobody knew about, because I didn't even know about it. They posted in the newspaper, and they posted in a public posting place where they're supposed to post. So what that tells me is, no, we didn't make sure that we got out to the community, because what I found out on further investigation is that when they post things in the paper, they generally will post them in the ledger. And so the idea is, let us make sure that we meet the requirement of giving the information to the public, but we're going to use these antiquated notification techniques that we know people don't use, so at least we could say we did it and then rubber stamp this process. Well, when you put somebody like me in front of that, my question is, if we didn't accomplish what it is we wanted to accomplish, then maybe the rule is broken, or maybe we need to do something different. And so I got involved with an effort to change how we're communicating to the public, because if our job is to speak on the behalf of the public, you bet your bottom dollar that I want to make sure I understand what's going on with the public, because the fact of the matter is the public may not necessarily like what I like, but it's not up to me, it's up to them. Just like this channel, there may be things that I don't like that I talk about on this channel. There's not, but there may be. But the thing is, the channel's not for me, it's for you, which is why I always ask you for your comments. So there were really three things that I took away from this set of experiences that I just think, when you're thinking about your sense of purpose, or what are you going to do if you retire early, or why do it, is number one, it's a great time to just get engaged. It's a great time for you to take a look at all of the things that you don't like. Heavy D back in the 90s said, now that we found love, what are we going to do with it? Well, let's turn that around. You didn't like certain things, and if you don't know, now you know. Now get out there and do something about it. As they say, don't boo, vote, or don't talk about it, be about it. And I'm in these things because there's things about my environment that I don't like, so I change them. I get involved in the process. I got into, a little secret about me. I never liked the idea of working for somebody else, because I always felt like working for somebody else was helping other people meet their goals and not you meeting yours. And I knew people were treated unfairly. I know people of color are treated unfairly. I know women are treated unfairly. I know that there's a small amount of a large amount of compensation constrained or concentrated in certain parts of leadership. So I could have either been mad about it, just like everybody else is, just like the rest of you are, or I could become part of the process. So I went, got myself in the roles of increased responsibility within HR. So then I became the person setting policy, and I can make sure that every policy is fair and equitable and ensures that everybody is treated fairly. So again, it gives you an opportunity to really get in the process, whether it's civic engagement, community engagement, whatever it is, or even just with your friends. The other thing I realized is, and I think I already knew this, but this was more of a reality check, is that if you take a look now, and this is different than when I was a kid, but now everybody has a position on everything. The Republicans have a position on something, the Democrats have something on this, and everybody's worried about the independents, and then the libertarians have a different way, but they're kind of embedded in some of these different parties, and there's all of this crap. But at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want to make sure that we could feed ourselves, feed our families, and take care of our families. That's all anybody wants. Now, if there's somebody that wants something different, I challenge you, tell me. And I'll make an episode about it. But the reality is, we all want to be able to feed ourselves and feed our families and take care of ourselves. And, that may come with buying some new things or doing some different stuff, but at the end of the day, it's all basic. So I'm talking to a farmer who's worried about, is climate activism going to impact his ability to continue to run his business because of rising costs? Now, I could say, I think it's going to do that. I don't think it's going to do that. But me telling somebody else that they're wrong for thinking about something isn't going to get them to feel one way or the other. What it is, it becomes incumbent upon me to try to understand that. And so as I advocate for certain types of solutions, let's advocate for the farmers. Let's get out there with the farmers, because the fact of the matter is, California farmers feed a majority of the produce around the United States of America. So why not? Just like the Iowa farmers out in Osceola, Iowa, or the farmers out in Nebraska, or the farmers out in Texas. I don't care what kind of farmer you are. I don't care what it is that you do. But the fact of the matter is that if you have a concern about something, generally it's it's more complicated, more complex, and more personal than whatever it's being reduced to. And so those are the types of conversations that we have. And as a person who's retired early, I have found that it's my responsibility, at least with the information that I have, to share that information all the way around. But understand that people's perspectives largely are going to be, and the way they communicate it is going to be influenced by the information that they get. So just because somebody disagrees doesn't make them a bad person. Now, there are some things that if you believe them, I cannot meet you there. If you believe that that women should not be treated the same way as men, I can't meet you there. If you feel that people of color should be treated differently than anybody else, I cannot meet you there. But if you believe that fossil fuels, that there's a strong place for fossil fuels and electric, even if I believe we can go one way or the other, sure, we could talk about that. So again, there's some non-negotiables, because I think the idea of meeting people where they are, I think it makes sense in maybe 85% of the scenarios, but some stuff is just wrong. Treating people poorly is just wrong. Treating people a certain way because of what they look like is wrong, because, we're all ugly to somebody. So I'll leave that there. But on the last one, that last thing is that, we have to, as a people, we have to be able to trust each other, and that's easier said than done, because part of that trust equation is providing people with good information and allowing them to make the best decisions for themselves. See, I never believe that I should agree with everybody, and I don't believe that everybody should agree with me. In fact, I have a saying that I'm not better than anybody and nobody's better than me. But if you have good information and then you make a decision based on that good information that's good for you and your family, then who am I to tell you that you're wrong for doing that? But the thing is right now, a lot of people are making decisions and they don't have access to the information. And so if they don't have access to good information, they're making long-lasting decisions without good information and without taking all the different angles into account. And again, if you feel different, please let me know. But I'm just going to tell you, from having traveled across almost all 50 states, having met thousands and thousands of people every year during my speaking time, and working in the field and human resources, and I've met a lot of people, and I'm still convinced that at the end of the day, the only thing that separates the two of us is the fact that how we view the information that we've had and the decisions we make based on that information. It doesn't necessarily make you a bad person, but there are decisions that do make you a bad person. But again, I'm not here to tell anybody how to be a bad person and what bad decisions are, so I'm not going to go down that path. I don't think that's constructive. But I think these are 3 examples of where I had the opportunity to meet people that I may not have normally have met, and had a set of experiences that really helped shape and continue to help my view of the world evolve. So on that note, again, I wanted to give you one that was a bit informal, because I do think that, I'm incredibly excited that we've reached a year on the channel. But if there's anything that's on your mind, let me know. I think you all know that I will respond to your comment. And if you have a question that you'd like to have discussed on the air, let me know. I'll talk about it. I'll do some research and I'll figure it out. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about me. It's about all of us. It's about the community, and you are the community. So on that note, have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.